Aljamain Sterling, your reigning UFC bantamweight champion, taking on TJ Dillashaw. Again, BC, we start with the odds, a very similar line. Minus 175 for the champ, and Sterling plus 150 for Dillashaw. BC, what will define who wins this bout?
It's crazy, right? Because Aljo just went through this. He just convinced us that he's not, the guy everybody was painting him to be after he, won by DQ and it wasn't his fault the way that went, and posed him with the belt, and, we all turned on him for a year, right? And then he reminded us how great he still is, right? I mean, he's amazing. But you're either going to believe in TJ Dillashaw's chances or not. But if you are a believer in it, Luke, there was one thing he loves to talk about himself. I mean, look, he loves playing the cocky villain because he is. That's who he is. But, something he talks about is, my wrestling's better. Okay, we can argue on that too. But also, I just think at the end of the day, I'm tougher and more willing to go to that level and go to that place and do it. Again, if you play that as a not just being braggadocious talk of a conceited guy, but who's also a badass, yes, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're completely disrespecting Aljo. Luke, he's already proven time and again, TJ Dillashaw, that he's willing to do whatever it takes. In that spirit, even though it can get you in trouble, and he got caught. And do I think that's the only time he ever used? Probably not. Probably not, okay? You hear a lot of people make accusations about him. I mean, yeah, definitely not. But that's all part of who he actually is at the day. That's why at 36, he's able to not only come back from the 2-year suspension where he didn't lose his belt, go through a hellacious fight with Corey Sandhagen where in the first round he effed up his knee, and find a way to alter a strategy and win that fight, and then miss another full year, and then come in looking like a freaking alien. Do we have this picture, Long Island Luke, to throw up, not to vomit, but to throw up on the screen here, of TJ Dillashaw during fight week here, shredded to heck and back?
Jesus Christ.
Okay, so I'm not doing this casual thing where I'm like, oh my God, you see how ripped he is? Everybody, he's going to win. I'm just telling you that if this fight becomes a fight, and not, and if Aljo's not able to instill the plan A and control it, really like he did against Peter Yan in the second fight, and give him a lot of credit, and this does become that, well, that's where TJ Dillashaw still got it. That's where he's still really dangerous. That's why he's getting the respect on this line. Even though he's the underdog, it's a respectful underdog spot. Luke, if this can become that war that we know TJ can do, even with the age and everything that's happened to him, he's still always got a great gas tank. He's willing, look at the 2 Garbrandt fights. He's willing to get in there and get dirty with you. I think the biggest thing, or the X factor or thing to look for me, is if TJ can take this fight late and make it a fight. I like his chances here, Luke. I like his chances. And he can get subbed too, but I don't think Aljo's going to have the control over him on the ground that he's had over other opponents. And whose striking do you like better over 5 rounds? I don't think I'm believing in a version of TJ that's not coming through that door. Look, this guy's a motherfucker. He's coming. Look, this guy will do whatever it takes to be great, and you know that. Him winning a 3rd title in this division, even with all the doping stuff, is not out of the question here, Luke. I'm not saying he's Barry Bonds, but sometimes when people are great, no matter what happened to them, you got to recognize that they're great. People love saying Dom Cruz is the greatest bantamweight of all time, but even if you take resume out of it, this is the prototype. This is the best bantamweight we've ever seen, and he still got it, Luke. But it's an if he can take it there and not succumb to what Aljo does great, which is a lot of things right now, Luke. So let's give him the pound for pound respect he deserves.
To me, it's a great assessment, but to me, what I think really will define whether or not he wins will be just to what extent what kind of striking choices in terms of distance and stance he elects to use, one, in conjunction with what kind of takedown defense he employs. Why do I say this? If the fight was just a boxing or kickboxing match, who would you favor, right? You would probably favor TJ Dillashaw. I just think he's much better on those pure terms. Aljo's got a jab and he can stick and move. We've seen it. And by the way, can go the distance as well. But just on pure striking terms, I just feel like the creativity and the weaponry, I should say, is much deadlier on Dillashaw's side. So that's what he's got going for him. But the problem is, and you saw this against Yan, Yan's a better striker too. It just didn't really matter against Sterling, by virtue of what he was able to do. What do I say this for? What we've talked about a lot with Sterling is that he is looking for back exposure. And you see this a lot with the Jan fight. But part of the way he's able to create back exposure is not just by going for a single leg, picking him up and then dropping him, then getting outside of his elbows, which is what he did a couple of times. But it was other stuff too. One of the ways in which Jan was trying to get away so what you're going to see from Sterling almost certainly is he loves single leg attacks. Not to just run the pipe there in the middle, but to grab it and then run them into the fence and then do something else from there. Sometimes he can get a wrestling takedown like a double leg from there, sometimes not. But it's the single leg pickup. That's what you're looking for. So you have to decide which leg do you want to put forward if you're TJ Dillashaw based on what you've seen on the tape from what Sterling likes. That's the first part. The second part is what you saw from Jan was Jan did the correct thing, typically speaking, to get out of one of these takedowns from a single leg, which was to turn away, pump the leg, and then bring it out. But what Sterling would do is grab it, hold on to it, and just raise it, which would cause a scramble. It would force a guy like Jan to his hands, and then he could find the back immediately. So when I bring this all up, BC, it's to say Dillashaw and his team have to have an answer for the single leg where he doesn't readily give away back exposure. Because I think if he does, Sterling can't miss. Sterling is so good at backpacking, holding it, and then winning rounds that way. Sometimes he can finish from there, obviously, against Corey Sandhagen. I do think he's got better jiu-jitsu, and I do think in terms of that specific kind of attack, he's very, very good for it. Dillashaw has to stop that before it starts and not give into it. That will define his stance, that will define his striking choices, and it will define how he defends the single leg. If he gets any of those pieces wrong, he can't win.
No, you're deep in the chess pieces there, and you explain that perfunctorily, Luke, if that's even a word as well. But
perfunctory means like unnecessary or worthless.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe I'll stick with that definition then, Luke. Okay, I'm here for that too. I want to ask you, big success for Aljo was being able to take Jan down and scare him there. How do you compare the takedown defense of TJ Dillashaw to Piotr Jan, who Jan was a guy who I thought had no holes, and then I saw Aljo beat him straight up.
Okay, so here's the thing. Jan did what he typically does. He defended takedowns in a way that he normally does. He didn't get out of anything that was, like, you saw from Jan the same types of attempts anyway that you commonly see no matter what. The problem was that wasn't going to be a good strategy against Sterling, which he found out the second time the hard way. You can see him here. What do you see Sterling doing? Look on the screen. You saw just a second ago, single leg pickups. Dude, if Dillashaw's team is worth a shit, and they're very good, they have to know that Jan, I think, got caught up in the first fight where it wasn't as big of a feature that he was dealing with some of those things. The second time around, now that you've seen it, you know that if you do anything where he's able to maintain control of an ankle and elevate it or force your hands to the mat in some kind of a way, you're in trouble. You have to down block in front of him before you give any kind of angle or turn or anything like that. Jan was turning and then giving away his back, thinking he could just use his standard defense, which is nothing wrong with that defense in 99% of cases. It was just the absolute wrong defense against this guy. Dillashaw now has the benefit of seeing that and coming up with strategies to get around it. The question is, will he be able to? Because again, I think if Aljo finds his back, it's a wrap. I really believe that.
Luke, my romanticized speech about what I believe Dillashaw still has and why I think people tend to look too much at the controversy and not realize the heart and perseverity behind him. Just like I said in the Charles Oliveira explanation of, it's going to catch up to you eventually. Like, is it too hero worshiping here to expect or believe that TJ can stay on this level? I mean, are we overlooking what the effects of another year off and a major knee injury can say about his movement, which is obviously going to have to be a huge part of his success here? Like if you heard a casual like me come out and give you an impassioned cry about why TJ is going to win this, what's the counter jab to that? I mean, how realistic is it that he can keep doing this, come back and look freaking amazing?
Well, he'll be 37 in February, which for bantamweight is very, very old. But he's, of course, 36 now. I think, okay, so you want me to, how does Dillashaw do it? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I guess, do you have any concerns? Like, it's not, okay, there's a way he loses this if Aljo out-strategizes him, and gets it done. But is there any concern that we're not getting, that there's any chance that we're asking him to keep coming back from a lot of time off and major injuries, this double shoulder surgery, the knee reconstruction, all that stuff.
So what I would say is, for me, listen to this. He wasn't really active before. He fought 3 times in 2016. Okay, that's a lot. Once in 2017, once in 2018, once in 2019. Then he had the 2 years off, and 2021. Like since 2017, he's been just not active hardly at all, even not counting the USADA suspension. But for me, BC, like, what's the best argument for Dillashaw? Dude, Dillashaw was, okay, so let's say 2017, 2018, right, when he was just lumping up Garbrandt. What would you say about him? My argument about him at that time would be he was ahead of the game. He had a set of skills which made him very unpredictable, especially in the striking department, that most of his bantamweight contemporaries at the time simply had no answer for. He had an advanced game. Now, I think the game has slightly caught up. Obviously, actually, I think it's caught up a lot since then. But the point being is he had a head start in certain ways. He had a head start by virtue of his vast technical development. So I still think his game, even if the rest of the division has caught up to a degree in terms of best practices, is what I mean, not that they're all the same level as TJ Dillashaw, is that he does still have a really keen eye and game that can be very unpredictable. I think that's what he has to do. I think he has to have unusual angles. I think his timing needs to give Aljo problems. Aljo has to second guess. If he at all has confidence that he just can time it right, grab the ankle, run him to the fence, and then after that do his magic, well then, I don't really know what Dillashaw can do for 5 rounds to beat that. That seems too much. But by virtue of his footwork and his placement and his unpredictability and his feinting and he is a combination striker as well, by the way. I think that could be big. Leg kicking, we haven't even talked about that. I think leg kicking could be kind of interesting, although Aljo likes to catch kicks, so you got to be careful about that as well. I think that's the one big thing. You kind of know Sterling doesn't have Sterling's kind of got one way to win. He does have good striking, but it's not lethal. TJ has lethal striking backed by a certain degree of creativity and unpredictability. He has to force that on the decision-making of a guy like Aljo. And if he does that, he's off to the races and he's going to hoist that belt on Saturday. Yeah,
and backed by, a really good chin, an incredible will to win, a high gas tank. So he's bringing a lot here. But Aljo, just did a clinic in a way. I know the fight was a split decision and there are truthers out there on the Jan side I didn't agree with. But, Aljo made a leap in that fight in a lot of ways. And obviously it was further amplified that he was coming off the DQ loss and shut a lot of people up. Okay, there's one way Luke Thomas said there's in the end one way for him to win. How does he make a plan B win if things aren't going his way?
Dillashaw?
No, Aljo.
Ooh. Don't know.
It's obviously the threat of the submission is always there. It's not impossible that his striking could hurt TJ. Is it as likely? I don't know. What is that plan B for Aljo that may need to be there in the end?
Honestly, if he can't get the strike, if he can't really meaningfully take Dillashaw down or find the back or something, one of those ways in which wrestling on his terms is how the fight looks, I don't think he can win. What other tool would he have? It's a limited portion of the game, right? The benefit to that is that he's gotten really good within that space. He's gotten exceptionally good in that space. The problem is outside of it's the same. Like, for example, you could make an argument about Khabib. Like, what happens if the takedown fails, right? What's Khabib going to do? Not much. I know he beat up on Ali Quinto in a weird fight on last minute notice, but in general, the striking is not what's going to win him. The reason he got around it is because that shit was so overwhelming. His contemporaries couldn't do anything about it. Is Aljo on that kind of level? I guess we're going to find out on Saturday. But is there a real good plan B that's even close to a plan A for Sterling? Ray Longo's a very smart guy. I'd love to see it, but I certainly have my doubts.
Yeah. This is it's a great fight. Luke, this could main event any pay-per-view. I'm willing to buy with my own money. What a great fight. But Luke, it's prediction time though. Okay,
it is prediction time. You go first.
I'm sorry. I have been a TJ guy from day one, a Dillashaw guy, and I'm shocked that he still got it at this level. But the thing is, as long as the layoff and the knee injury and the shoulders and everything else, as long as, his body doesn't take him out of it in any way, he has a particular set of skills that's well-rounded and lethal enough across the board where Aljo could have trouble getting that plan A into effect. I like TJ Dillashaw, Luke, and I'm not going to be overly, I'm not going to be overly surprised if he gets a stoppage on the feet as well, Luke. I think, we know he's always going to be coming on and he's going to give himself the best chance to win and put it all in. I mean, for all the truthers that Sandhagen should have won, and look, it was a close fight. It could have gone either way. Flip it. Dillashaw did that on one leg, Luke. You know what I mean? My biggest fear for him in some ways is injury or a cut or something like that could hold him back. If it's 100% versus 100%, he's going to win this championship for a third time, whether we're ready to accept that or not. I mean, this guy's that good. Okay, so hit me up afterwards when he loses, and you can, at B Campbell on Twitter, please drop those bombs if necessary. But for my money, this is the bet, Luke, and I hope now, TJ and Aljo are not betting, Luke, because it's illegal per Hunter Campbell.
Yeah,
we'll
talk about that. We'll talk about that in a bit. By the way, just for the record, how old is Aljamain Sterling? He's 33, so it's not like he's as old. BC, listen, I thought Jan was going to get it done against Sterling, and he didn't. And I just said if Sterling's A game doesn't work, his B game is just not nearly as good. It's not nothing, but it's not going to be enough, I think, to power him to victory. But the problem for me is I was so wrong about him. I was so wrong about him in that Jan fight. I can't do it twice. I just can't. I listen, these odds, you could make a very good case for Oliveira, for Makhachev, for Dillashaw, for Sterling. It's not very difficult to do. But in having been wrong about Sterling and then having to reflect on that, I would not like to compound my errors. And I do think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be close, probably, split decision type territory, to be quite honest with you. But I think Sterling's going to have enough to get it done. We don't. I don't know, but we shall see.
Make no mistake about this. If Sterling, as the betting favorite here, wins this, he better be in your top, 4 pound for pound. I mean, you take away that DQ fight. And I know it's hard to take away the idea that he looked like he was on his way to defeat, but come on, Leon Edwards, you never freaking know. He's on a hell of a run himself. He's been getting better fight by fight. I'd love to be wrong on the idea that Aljo isn't going to come out and take it to another level because, Luke, I give him so much respect for the run he's been on. Part of what makes this fight so great. Can't wait to see what it looks like Saturday. Yes.
Yeah, again, if you throw away the first Jan fight because it was just inconclusive, I think is the best way you could put that. Still, he would have consecutive wins over, at that point, Sandhagen, second Jan fight, and then if it happens on Saturday, Dillashaw. Shit, bro.
Dude, and he subbed Sandhagen in like a minute, too. We can't forget that part of it.
Dude, that is like a murderer's row of fights if he can get through it.